Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our BDPA Tech and Career Talks. I am our National Tech and Career Talk leader, Devin Jenkins. I serve as an IT business partner for our U.S. and Canada enterprise operations organizations at GE Healthcare. And I'm also the founder and CEO of Share the Vibes LLC. I'm based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But we have people joining us today from all over and even more watching on YouTube right now. So if you are watching on YouTube, thank you for being here. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment below, click the bell so you know when we post. Share this with someone who needs to hear this conversation. Thank you for being with us again. Share with somebody right now. Do it while you do it. You got time. You're on YouTube. You can pause it and do that. So share it with somebody. So we're excited for today's conversation. But before we jump in, I always like to give a little bit of context around BDPA. And who we are, just in case you're new to the organization, and also tell you a little bit about this Tech and Career Talk platform. So BDPA started as Black Data Processing Associates, was founded in 1975. So this is our 50-year anniversary. We just had an amazing celebration in Atlanta a month ago. Had a great time between the Western Peachtree Plaza and the MIMS Museum of Innovation and Art. Just a fantastic celebration of these 50 years, while also honoring our path forward and making sure we're still on the forefront of technology and raising up the next generation of technology leaders. So I'm super excited about that. But we did start in 1975 as an organization focused on building up the talent pipeline in the IT industry within the African American community, and doing that with a focus primarily on youth. But there's also a professional arm as well. But a lot of our focus is around middle and high school students and teaching them computer programming skills, introducing them to technologies, giving them professional development so that they are prepared for careers in the IT industry, but also for collegiates and professionals who are already in the workforce, making sure we're able to continue fine tuning our skills and expanding our network so that we can continue to advance careers from the classroom to the boardroom. So that's what we're all about. These second career talks take place second and fourth Friday of each month, with a few exceptions. But for the most part, we're here second and fourth Friday each month, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Central. For 1 hour, and we have different speakers come in speaking on different topics. Some as hard as brain computer interaction, and AI, and then some are more on the softer side. We've talked about how to work with jerks here before and emotional intelligence. So we give you quite a range of topics, and a range of speakers from all walks of life and at different points in their careers, from students to retired executives. So you get everything in between to make sure everyone can take something away from these conversations and this platform. So thank you for being here again today. Super excited for today's conversation with our very own Tenaiya King, who is our National Communications Director for BDPA, and she does a number of things that we'll get into here shortly. But first and foremost, Tenaiya, how are you doing today?
I am doing well and swell. How are you doing?
Well and swell. That's all right. That's all
You gotta add an
right.
S.
No, I'm great. I can't complain. And it's Friday, so I'm feeling good. Looking forward to the weekend after a busy week. But I'm glad to have you with us today, Tanaya. I always like to start these conversations off with a bit of an icebreaker question, just to get us going before we start getting into the meat of things. So today's conversation is around branding, positioning strategies to maintain and expand your target audience. So a lot of talks around marketing and branding today. So I thought it was only right if we get into you as being a marketing and branding strategist. What is your biggest pet peeve? Just something marketing related. So what's your biggest marketing related pet peeve?
I would say, to be honest, I really hate cookie cutter brand packages. And I'm sure you've seen it before, like have the funnel, make sure you do this so this happens. And, email goes to text, goes to PDF. Like everybody doesn't need that to sell a product or a service. Like I'm not saying there's not certain commonalities that can work for certain people, but that particular format doesn't work for everybody. So packaging it in a way that everybody can use a certain flow is not best catered to optimize people's customization of their own brand, and everybody deserves a tailored approach of how they want to approach their target audience.
There it is. Not a one size fits all type thing, but truly, when you think about marketing and branding, and I'm sure you'll discuss it today, but I think it's a lot of figuring out who your target audience is and how do you serve them? What do they need from you? That could change over time. So having a one size fits all approach to building a brand could definitely see how that might be frustrating for you. as a professional in this
Yeah.
industry. So hopefully you can help us get out of that today. So no, thank you for that. So I think that's a good segue into kind of kicking off today's conversation. I think it's good to know like why do you even care about this in the first place? So what sparked your passion for marketing and branding?
So, number one, I'm a creative, like all things around from drawing to poetry to dancing, you name it, pretty much. I do it creative wise. So, as a creative, you are an expressive, and something is being conveyed, which that automatically ties into communications and marketing. You strategically put words together and put designs, positioning together to convey a message of what you're trying to provide to X people. So it's the digitized version of creative expression for an appointed reason. And being a strategic communicator, listening more than I speak allows me to analyze what's being discussed, but what's the why behind it and the posture behind it, because you can learn a lot about a person or a brand just by the way that they put out what they're saying, not just the words that they're using. Everybody says actions speak louder than words, but the same way body language can make you resonate with something differently, same goes for branding and marketing. Like, I like the example of, okay, somebody's trying to give you candy. If an older lady is offering you candy with a smile, you might take that before you take candy from a man with a white band behind him. Because statistically, something is wrong with that motive with the man with the white band behind him. So um, that's really, I would say, like me looking at the strategic positioning of creativity, and been in a decade or been in this for about a decade. And I really think strategic movements with authenticity is what people are looking for, and that's what creativity is about.
Hmm. So you've been a creative all your life, even before we were doing social media marketing per se. Dance, whether it's dance music, building a website, writing a 200-page book. It's all creative expression. But you found branding to be your way of kind of tailoring that expression in a way that fosters your passion and helping other people, kind of fulfill their dreams. That's a pretty dope story. Do you still dance?
Right. Yes, I do.
Okay, what
In
type of
my
dance
free
do you do?
time. I would say like contemporary or hip hop sometimes, but preferably contemporary dance.
Okay, didn't know that. Okay, learning something new today. So
I
okay,
keep
so we
stuff in a
know what
box.
sparks your passion. Hey, you can't put it all on the table, I guess. So
Right.
with that passion, I think you work in a few different realms. You're a corporate employee, you have your own business. We've already said you're the communications lead for BDPA, so that's a somewhat of a nonprofit, more of an educational tech org brand. So those are a few different lanes right there already. So tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do. But also, when we talk about branding, positioning strategies, how do you flex that based on the different sectors or the different industries or lanes you're in?
Cool. So, in short synopsis, as you said, because I probably wear at least five hats, but utilizing both strategic communication and design to um, combine that with data to present the best strategies possible, whether that be for the internal business or external business, to either sell a product, sell a service, or get people to attend an event like BDPA Con 25. Stay tuned for BDPA Con 26. Put that out there. But yeah, that's basically the synopsis of what I do, looking at industry best practices and aligning that data to internal data and basically exporting that the best way possible. So,
Yeah.
to your point about branding strategies for different sectors, I would say everybody has a common goal to share and they want to communicate something about a subject. I like to look at it in the way like a sentence is formed, right? There's a subject, which is the noun, the action to be taken, verb, which in marketing is called a call to action, supporting elements, adjectives, and the tone, which is the punctuation. So literally like approaching that in the same way as marketing, like you inevitably choose what works best based on what you're trying to communicate, why you're trying to communicate it, and to who. So for different events or circumstances, it is catered to your target audience, like the way you would, I don't know, send an email to students versus sending an email to people who are retired. The time frames are different. So just incorporating those different personas about who you're communicating to allows you to kind of cultivate, okay, these type of people want this type of information and this is the way they want it packaged, in a general sense, because of course everybody is different, but you can get a general synopsis enough to cover the most ground. And again, different sectors, but they all ultimately have a goal, but you apply analysis of the industry and the customer base and tailor it to best suit why you should be trusted for your product or service.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So to that point, I think different, like you say, different lanes have different audiences, even different priorities, if you will. So I think you made a great parallel. It's very relevant to BDPA. What works for a high school student may not work for the 15-year tech professional, but we have to
Right.
communicate to both. So how do we tailor, the message to make sure we're feeding both of those audiences that we're serving there? I think that's a good point. So we'll probably dig into that some more as we get into the conversation. But before we get too far down the road, I want to make sure we ground everyone on the basics here. I like fundamental questions, when I have these conversations. So,
Right.
and talking about brand positioning strategies, I think it's important that we understand what a brand is. So, in your words, from your expertise, what would you say are the core pillars of any brand?
So for a brand, it's literally it's your showcase. That's who you are, what you're showing that you're about. And for these points, if you want particular talking or writing points, I write these down. So subject, your standpoint, your strategy, solutions, and style. So those five things are the core pillars of a brand. So the subject is, what's being provided. The stance is your why. The strategy is how your why guides your actions. The solutions is, catering to that what's in it for me, because everybody wants the what's in it for me when they come to your brand. And the style is the way that you express what you're presenting.
Did you intentionally do five S's?
Of course, I love alliteration.
Five S's: subject, stance, strategy, solution, stock. I didn't realize as you were saying it, but as I was typing it, I said, huh, okay, I got the five S's. So the five S's of a brand: subject, stance, strategy, solution, style. Okay,
Yes.
cool. All right, yeah, okay, okay. I didn't know what you were going to say, but I didn't expect that. So okay,
Oh,
subject, stance, strategy, solution, style.
yep.
Anything, any brand, regardless of the sector, the audience, you need these five pillars here: a subject, what's it about? Stance, well, how do you feel about it? Strategy, what's your approach to it? Solution, what are you doing about it? And then your style, how are you going about doing it? That's
All
okay.
right.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right, hope y'all took notes of that. Five core pillars of a brand. So we need to know that before we can really just kind of get into this. So we're talking about brand positioning today specifically. So talk a little bit about building a brand versus positioning a brand, because I would imagine those are two different things. So, what's the difference between building a
Yeah.
brand versus positioning a brand?
Yeah. So when I was kind of thinking about that difference, honestly, they entail the same elements. It's just the way that they're framed, and there might be one additional add to it. But building the brand ties in elements of storytelling to your core pillars. So even down to like brand colors. For example, like a brand who wants people to receive care related services will want their customers to feel warm and connected. So using like dark colors that will reflect a gloomy mood won't get that point across. So you have to know what story you're telling in order to build the brand that you're trying to show and know what you're wanting them to receive. And getting across that it's a partnership. So both sides, as the brand and the customer consumer, are assets to each other. So there's no brand without the connection and network of the consumers and the people. um, so building that brand is having those five pillars laid out, and also having your differentiator of why they should choose you. That why is super important, because there's millions, if not billions, of people who have at least thought of, if not, produced the same idea or thing that you have. So why should they choose you out of everybody else? Is really, like, I would say, in the top three. In addition to the strategy, but on the positioning side, I would say it's more so intentional direction and placement of your core pillars in the areas your audience wants, needs, and usually operates in. So, like, a car company, it makes sense to have a billboard on highways where people are driving because they have cars, and it makes sense for, like, I don't know, a sporting goods company to market themselves at a games where sports are being played. So, like, positioning yourself where your audience is most likely going to be based on their common interests is what the positioning is about. And even down to your online presence, that's definitely a form of positioning. The way that you showcase, for example, being more modern versus more elaborate, is based on your target audience, that you want them to receive it in a way. So you have to position yourself in a way that you anticipated to be received.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that and sharing those differences, distinguishing between building and positioning. Because I think a lot of us have great ideas, we have great products, and we execute on those things very well. So I think a lot of us have strong brands, strong services, like great businesses, but we're not always as strong as positioning that brand, which is what we really need to get the growth and the success that we need to sustain those businesses and turn those into what they ultimately should be. So thank you for talking through that. Now, this is a tech organization with BDPA, Black Data Processing Associates, and you mentioned earlier a little bit about when you're in the different lanes you're in, kind of a common thread across all of those, that you're taking data and kind of transforming that into how you communicate a brand or a business's story to their audience. So, tell us about the role that data and technology play in effective brand positioning.
Sure. So data is really the technical version of credibility and reliability. Like, you can't dispute facts. Um, we're not going to talk about distorted data and all of those things, but in general, statistical data shows what it is what it is. And interpreting that data shows why industry best practices matter. There is no way to have an industry best practices without data. So you have to really go through and test the industry data versus what your own internal data is for your brand, and cultivating that from scratch, of course. If you're just starting or using what you have and doing testing strategies, then you have that internal data to see what works best, and continue to cross reference it too, because things are always changing within culture and just technology in general and the media. So being able to rely on data and what's out there, what people are saying, you can cultivate your positioning in a way that's more accurate and most accurate as possible.
Are there any um, maybe strategies you would say, or kind of best approaches to getting the data you need when you think about positioning a brand and what you need to be looking at, so kind of what you need to do with those five S's you mentioned? And any best approaches to that?
I would say, in my personal opinion, of course, just go to multiple sources. Don't just trust one source. So if multiple sources are saying the similar things, you kind of aggregate that data into what's the most common thing being communicated, and using that as data sources, and just being able to compare is going to be your best bet, honestly, because I, as a journalism, mass communications, multimedia major in college, like they were adamant about always check your resources and see how credible they are, because there's some sources who are trying to spin a narrative and say a certain thing in a certain way, or take out a certain part of the overall story to create their own narrative. So you got to be careful with just leaning on one. Um, but if generally, it's a widely known source, or if not, and you can literally search it up. Everybody's using Chat GPT or anything else, Gemini, etc., to say, hey, which out of these top five are the most relied on sources and things like that.
Oh, thank you for that. No, I think it's um, talk about data a lot, but we don't always get into kind of how to really go get it and get what we need. So I think it's good to have the technical piece of that as well. So thank you for talking through that. Now I want to shift gears a little bit. It's all connected, of course, but um, I believe one of the most critical components of branding is the target audience. I think you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have anyone to serve, doesn't matter. So when we think about a target audience, now how should we approach identifying our target audience? And also, how do we balance that with growing and expanding? Because you hear, especially like in the music business, and you hear with Drake a lot. It's like, no, all right, he's not serving the core base. He got too many people he has to serve, so the kind of nobody gets what everybody gets what they want, but nobody gets it at the same time. So we hear
Yeah.
people are trying different things, and they kind of lose their base. So how do we identify our target audience, but balancing that while we want to expand and grow as well?
For sure. Just like the favorite part, the meat of the sandwich, or for my vegans and vegetarians, whatever's between the bread of the sandwich. The approach, of course, starts with what your business is about. Um, and really thinking about, okay, based off of what I'm selling, who would want the items that I'm giving away? Like, I just really like giving examples. I feel like it conveys the point quickly. So, going back to an example. So, like a brand selling infant toys, right? They technically have two target audiences. Of course, the infants, but the parents, because the baby is not buying the toys, obviously, unless it's a super baby. Well, we ain't gonna talk about any instances. So, as to get the interest of the child to incline the parent to buy it. So then you're catering to, okay, what words would gravitate a parent, like, okay, it's safe, BPA free, like all of the free things, whatever the case is. The kids, they just want colors, bright colors, big words. Pretty much same for adults right now, with short attention spans. But I would say, like, that concept of knowing who you're targeting, even down to something like shea butter. Of course, they're targeting people who want to be moisturized. Like, I would hope that's everybody, but that's a wider scope of people. But if you look into like the reasons that shea butter is good for you, like anti-inflammatory, helps with dark marks. So people who have dark marks, they might have in the I don't know, like a case study before and after, so it would show that this is a credible product. Looking into what about your product is going to be the thing to gravitate those types of people who need that solution to be, you know, given to them. So I would say, like, morale, motives, and proof are really important, super important. Um, just leaning on the culture and nature of who would gravitate to these items and what you're looking to give, focusing more on what they'll get out of it versus your own gain. Because when you solve a problem and doing it in a way where your perspective is at the forefront more than the item itself, you figure out who resonates with that perspective. So, yeah, to balance that with growth and expanding first, you keep doing what you do well. That's just number one. Don't, what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But
Yeah, that's what to say.
first, yeah, first is that, but continuing to expand on what your audience likes, and asking them, like, what are things that y'all would like to see that we're not providing. because ultimately these are the people who are going to keep coming back. So you need to be asking them, and they'll share it with, whoever they know. Because thinking about like statistics show, again, going back to the data, word of mouth marketing is the most trusted recommendation for consumers by like 85 to 95%, influencing over $5 trillion in spending. So when you hear, from your friend, you're more likely to lean into buying a product or whatever the case is because you trust them. And then tying into that growth and expansion, you need to gain and maintain the trust. So the more that your consumers trust you, the more that they'll spread the word about your product to expand.
No, that's really good. It's funny you mentioned Shea Moisture because I remember my wife, even I used to use some Shea Moisture products pretty often when I had a little bit more hair on my head a few years ago. But I didn't last too long. But my wife has plenty of hair, so she
So,
used to use Shea Moisture products. I remember at some point it was either the ownership changed or like they got into some big retail stores and like the formula started changing. And it's almost
mm,
like there was a shift away from that target audience. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I think it's a good example of expanding, but not necessarily remembering your core audience as you do that. And I don't know how it worked out for them, but um,
right,
I don't know.
they still
It's
here.
just a good. Yeah, they're still here. They're still here. So, and maybe that's a question for you that just came to my mind is are there times where you may need to pivot and seek out a different audience? Is that a thing, or is that like a forbidden rule? Don't do that. I kind of don't know.
No, definitely not forbidden. I would say it's optimal to keep your core, because your brand, it has a reason. So your reason is your core in general, and you're trying to ensure that that core is still being catered to. But I mean, there's always companies expanding, adding different products. So those different products or services are going to bring different people. So inevitably, you're always going to be adding or tweaking your target audience. So I would definitely say it's not forbidden or anything.
Gotcha. No, so I think that's a segue into another point I wanted to cover. So, thinking about being able to pivot, being adaptable to change. So, what maybe not necessarily changing who your target audience is, but I do think there are cases where the needs of our audience might change for whatever reason. We live in an age where attention spans are almost non-existent. It's the TikTok age. If a TikTok's longer than about 30 seconds, you got a hard time keeping me personally. So you got TikTok. We have streaming where an album has a shelf life of about a week, if that. And then it's on to the next thing next Friday. So we got TikTok, we got streaming, you got the evolution of tech where our phones are updating overnight. You don't even realize it until you wake up and it's different. So things are moving so fast now. Attention spans are so much shorter. How do you keep a brand adaptable so that you're able to pivot as times change, as like circumstances change, and also just the needs of your audience change and continue to evolve? How do you, or what are your approaches, you say, to making sure your brand is adaptable and flexible to not lose the core to what you were just saying, to don't lose the essence of what it is, but being able to evolve as the things around it evolve?
Yeah, so I would say that's really what the positioning is about. Positions can change, they usually do. Um, but just kind of keeping in mind with your core, what about it would continue to resonate going forward years on end, or to grow and expand the way that you would anticipate. And thinking about, like, even just like you were saying, TikTok and streaming and all of those things, like, it's very modern and relaxed, but also people try new things. And just being able to modernize is really important for, I would say, being able to pivot. Because the way that you streamline and modernize the way that you move, you can be more open and flexible to showing your creativity in different ways, but also keeping that core. Um, and I would say different points, like just giving digestible snippets and pieces, I think is a big thing that I've adopted and usually express in different areas that I work in is allowing people to gain interest, not giving everything that you think they should know within multiple huge blocks of text, because nobody's going to read that ultimately in the beginning unless you have a adamant reader. But usually people like to dig their own rabbit hole, so you give them, bits of the carrot, so they're having the capability to at least get interested and want to know more. um One thing leads to another. And also, again, leaning into the way that you choose your colors, or staying with your brand colors, but not being afraid to incorporate new colors to attract a new audience or to gain attention, things like that, using different props. So I would say that, in your call to actions, again, bringing that back up from earlier, will influence people to act in additional thought or making a decision. So ensuring that's embedded in what you're communicating and what you're showing is going to be very essential in the way that you're positioning yourself, I would say.
So as there's a few things you said today that I'm kind of thinking about and taking note of because I said I have a business, and I have a podcast as a part of that. So you mentioned analytics and looking at different places, and I had a call like a week or two ago. So it's like let's look at the data from the last season just to see what we're looking at. And I was like, all right, clearly we didn't hit the mark here. But I was like, wait a minute, no, we got to look at YouTube. No, all right, we're looking at Spotify. We got to look at Apple. Like we had to look at different data sources to the point you made earlier to really try to figure out what the true story is. So that was one piece. But you just talked about giving people content in bite sizes that they can digest and let them dig their own rabbit holes. That's me on TikTok. Typically I go on TikTok with no intention of being there long at all. But I'll see, one clip from an artist or somebody that did something is like he does. Like this is one guy, and I do not remember his name. If you've seen it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But he does these like remakes of songs or reimagines them. If like Michael Jackson, and if Michael Jackson was singing it, Chris Brown was singing it, if R. Kelly was singing it, if Trey Songz was singing it, he like does different parts of the song in their different voices. But like the Trey Songz part is the one
Mhm.
everyone looks for. He does like the crazy eyes, like whoa, all the stuff. But it made me go down a rabbit hole on his page. I followed him, and I probably watched about 10 of his videos just because he did something that captured me from a quick clip that made me
Right,
go deeper. So, I've adapted that with my podcast. So whenever I release an episode, I do a YouTube short that goes with it too, just a little clip. And a lot of times the shorts perform better than the full episodes do. Going
right.
back to just our attention spans today. So I think you've shared some really great nuggets with that. So I have a couple more questions I want to hit on, and we're going to open up the floor to the audience here. I see some things starting to hit the chat. But we're talking about TikTok age and short attention spans. So a lot of successful branding and marketing today and positioning that comes through social media and content creation. It's a big thing. And it is tedious. I do not do it very well. I want to get enough money to hire somebody to just do that for me because I don't do it well. But nonetheless, um, doing those things like understanding the social media algorithms and creating compelling content, like it takes time, it takes some energy, it takes some effort. What would you say? What advice do you have when we're thinking about brand positioning? Um, what advice do you have for being discipline driven versus motivation driven? Let's see. Not always motivated. I'm not in there. I can tell you that. Yeah. So what? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I get excited about when people talk between motivation and discipline, because there's multiple standpoints, just exceeding the content creation alone. There's a rhythm between the two of motivation and discipline, because in life, truly, there's no balance. Different seasons require different mechanisms. So, with motivation, I would say to a lot of people, because I know, especially just this generation, is in this mindset that they idolize their feelings. Like, I don't feel like doing this, so I'm not going to do it. That attitude kills productivity. And I'm not saying that there's not a real thing of burnout. That's not what I'm talking about. But to not prioritize what you want to produce is basically you just don't want it bad enough. So there's that. The discipline is your motivation, honestly. That you'll be like, okay, I know I don't feel like doing this, but I want X to get done. So leaning more into the discipline over motivation, I would say, is the best way to go. It's kind of your plug and play, but try not to burn yourself out. Personally, I would say I'm not the best at this, but I've been getting a lot better over time. But it's just because I care about what I do so much to the point where I don't care what it takes really to a certain extent, or if it takes more than what's deemed necessary to the norm. I don't usually conform to the norms because keeping the same habits, like, you can't create innovation and opportunity. There has to be pressure for a breakthrough to occur. So yeah, I wouldn't say not by any means necessary. Like, be mindful and prioritize your time correctly, but by as many means as realistically possible. Because at least a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. Um, yeah, and finding a rhythm that works best for you. For example, sometimes I have days where I'll crank out a wide span of content ideas or work because I just have that energy to do it, and that's a part of that motivation and discipline. But that energy is there that day, so it gives a cushion for the days I don't necessarily, quote unquote, feel like doing it. I'm still going to do something, but I overworked on X day, so I have more wiggle room to not apply the same, level of effort. But yeah, I would say, for back to just general branding, the good news is, with discipline and being motivation driven, with content creation specifically, like, you see there's a whole lot of algorithms in the systems, which algorithms are data, literally. So it's the physical representation of data processing. So you're interacting with X content, so they're going to keep showing you X content, because that's what you interact with more. If you report or block, dislike with whatever other content, then it's not going to show up. So yeah, kind of leaning more so on, even as for you as the brand holder, or you supporting a brand, whichever side you're on, thinking about the people who are interacting, but also the way that you would want to interact with your own product if you weren't the owner, if you weren't the person trying to support it.
Yeah, some good nuggets in there. And I think one thing I heard you say was more or less scheduling the work. So for me, and it's something I need to get better at. Like we got better with the last season of our podcast. Like, we're gonna record on these days at these times. When we reach out to people, we're pretty much asking, "Hey, are you available these days, this time, this month?" And we kind of know that's to get the mindset right. There's some other examples I can think of where scheduling things might help that I won't get into right here, but um, that's something that's definitely helpful for me. If I know that, hey, this time, this day, that's when I'm getting in mode, and you kind of mentally prepare for that. Kind of helps you plan ahead and knock things out more so when you're just trying to find that bug. You're trying to squeeze it in between work and family and dinner and meetings and kids. It's very easy to get lost in the shuffle. So I'm glad you said. I think that's something that's very tactical that we could probably all take away and implement. Hey, let me just 30 minutes, 5:30 every Wednesday for an hour. Boom, this is what I'm doing. And I think our
Right.
bodies kind of get in mode with that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Good reminder there. Now, another
No
thing,
problem.
because again, like I say, technology organization, a lot of tech people on the call today. I think one way that can maybe help, to your point, avoid that burnout and be a little more discipline driven versus relying on motivation, is truly leveraging the tools that are available to make these things more efficient. So, how can technologies like AI and there's a lot of media tools today like Canva, there's content schedulers, later, Buffer, whatever you prefer, and there's other things out there. But how can we use some of these technologies to make brand positioning more efficient to help us scale and prevent that burnout that you just talked about?
For sure. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we all are utilizing something, whether that be a computer, a phone. It's all a tool, and ultimately, I would see, like, different tools are a digital version of a teammate. So leveraging them to the best capability, you're combining what you actually know that you want to communicate, but whether it be AI prompting or you just know what you want to talk about. Um, you're combining your skill sets to create a masterpiece ultimately. So definitely use tools to streamline your processes and expand capacity. Definitely love Canva. Love Canva down. It's endless possibilities with Canva for what you can do, combining stuff. I won't get into the nitty gritty with Canva. I could talk about Canva all day, but like really also looking deeply into what these platforms provide, because there's a lot of hidden capabilities, whether it be AI tools or design tools that people don't know about, or even just underlying things within the social media platforms themselves that people don't know. Like, for example, I found out for government contracting, specifically positioning thought leadership content, is better or more receptive to the target audience to have a carousel of posts, or like four posts like slideshow form versus having a video. It's more receptive in that way. So looking at like, okay, well, I have a graphic version of this content. Hey, Canva, can you actually produce this into a carousel? Use it as a template. And then, that's less strain for you trying to figure out how it would look. But of course, still going back to um, edit it and do your own customization, because ultimately that would be like plagiarism. That's how I see it, at least. So still don't take that as at face value. But I would say just leveraging as much as you can, and also saving your prompts for AI for sure. Having a running list, and also something I started doing is, okay, I really like this template. Chat GBT, save this as blah 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 format, and I can just put in quotations blank format, and it'll do it again. That's helped me a lot in different areas. So that's just a side tip, but yeah, I would say that usually works best for me, having those systems, but then consolidating the system into a prompting mechanism.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, I want to open the floor up to the audience in case there's any questions out there. Someone asked, will they get a replay of this conversation? Absolutely. This will be on our national BDPA YouTube channel. And will also be on our website, bdpa.org/tech and career talks. You can find this talk and all of our previous talks on the YouTube channel or on the website. We will make it easy for you to find. But any questions from the audience, feel free to come off mute and ask your questions, or you can put them in the chat and I can ask on your behalf. Questions or comments?
Don't be shy.
I'll just give it a moment just in case people are typing or thinking, or in case you're speaking on mute and don't realize. So I want to make sure we don't miss anything.
For sure.
Okay. While people are thinking, one question I have for you: are there any tools or resources you would recommend to anyone watching this or listening right now, just to aid them in the marketing and branding journeys? Any tools or resources you would recommend?
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna say Canva all day. Um, yeah, that's like number one. But yeah, that Hootsuite and Buffer are also good for content scheduling and looking at analytics, and you can kind of compare data. Um, yeah, honestly, the best resource though is always going to be your own imagination and discipline to make those ideas come to life over actual technical tool. Leaning on being a learner to increase your creativity and your confidence in that creativity.
Somebody agrees
Yes,
with you. So Canva
right.
is
So
definitely okay. Nobody said
it is
Canva
indeed.
is definitely goaded for sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from anyone in the call today? So we do have a question. What are your best analytics tools to determine the traffic?
So first, the easiest thing is definitely leverage what the platform has and aggregating that data within the social media platforms into your own, whether it be like a, I don't know, Excel sheet or I know that's old, but there's other versions like you can buy templates on Etsy for different like I would say displays of the way that you want to see your data. Um, and then otherwise, like these content planners, again, that they have their analytics displayed in a certain way, but combining it and creating your own analytic display is going to be the best bet, not just leaning on like what the numbers show in the plainest sense. Like, for example, like if I'm going to give a super random example. Impressions, right? Say your impressions for March 2025 was 2,000 on a post versus April, you got 50. Like, okay, so what did I do in March that is not happening in April? And then try to retest, different little things about what you did and playing with that for your analytics to expand as well.
Sounds like your major recommendation is whatever platform you're in, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Most of those platforms tend to have analytics available. So starting there and then figure out how do you aggregate all of them together, whether that's in Excel or some other tool that you use to and actually displaying that for your audience if needed.
Yes, because I don't like to recommend, big costly products. Like everybody doesn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a tool. So I really recommend using what you have to your best capability, to the highest capability possible, making sure that you know all the nooks and crannies of that platform before you say, I need to go buy something. Because even with me, like I would say back before I was officially doing it for companies and everything, me doing social media and marketing, like I was able to kind of look at, okay, this is what the YouTube platform is doing just based off of research. This is what, X platform is doing. And at that time, and I feel like this is a point that I kind of wanted to speak to as well. Your storytelling, that you have to be strategic, but also don't be afraid again to pivot, but be yourself as much as possible. There's a lot of people where you can tell that they planned it out, and that's not as interesting. People want authenticity. So there at that time, I was very concerned about this one video I was doing, like a shoe review, right? um love shoes, like sneakers. To be specific, I haven't gotten the heels yet. Maybe I'll graduate later. But yeah, I was doing a shoe review on some Air Forces, and I was like trying to plan out all of the points I wanted to say. And at a certain point, I was like, yeah, I wrote these points down, but forget these points. So then I did the video, edited down to like 6 minutes, and that video did better than all the videos I planned and got like 80,000 views on YouTube versus my other ones got like 2,000 views. So yeah, being the epitome of, show them better than you can tell them, honestly. Yeah, leveraging just your own personality and why something matters to you, whether that be for a caption, capitalization, punctuation, all of the Asians, your expression with emojis, all of the things. Just being intentional when you express yourself, why they trust your personality, um, in addition to the data, because credibility is key and it's proof that you have applied knowledge and experience for them to want to continue to lean on you versus someone else.
Authenticity builds brand loyalty. That's a good one. That's a good one. We have another question
Yeah.
in the chat saying, with everything that you do, how do you manage time management so you're not overwhelmed?
Yeah. I want to think about this carefully because, yeah, I would say my time management is a little bit different than I would say people recommend. Some people say, "Oh, well, I feel like you might need to take a break." Sometimes I do, but honestly, again, kind of leaning back to just optimizing your time. Um, And one thing I would say that helps me with that with time management is setting a timer like on my phone and being like, okay, 15 minutes of time, I'm not going to do anything else but lock into this one thing as deep as possible. And usually I end up extending the time. That helps a lot. But knowing what time you can't waver on versus what you can is going to help a lot. Structuring your days based off of what you know your typical week looks like and optimizing that time as much as possible. So, also for me, I'm more of a night owl worker than working in the morning, which it depends on the day, but mostly at night. So I optimize my nights a lot of the times to get extra work cranked out if I feel that extra energy to do so. I hope that helps. But as far as the burnout piece, know when to take a break. It's okay to take a break. But those timers also give me like a sense of, hey, like these 15 minutes are over. If you want to take a break, that's fine. But set another timer once you get started so you know the time, that's passing.
Anything else from the audience today? Okay, if not, any last words or closing thoughts from you, Tenaiya?
Mm, last thoughts. Again, just reiterating your strategy is going to be your best friend, but between the friendship is the connection. So you have to be able to continue to connect with people, be personable, be real. Um, don't fluff, don't sugarcoat, be honest, show yourself true, and people will gravitate to that.
There it is. You heard it here first. Maybe not, but you heard it here today. That's what it is. So, so thank you again, Tenaiya, for sharing with us. This has been great. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you want to hear from future talks so we can make sure we get you what you need so we can keep serving our target audience as your needs change and evolve, like Tenaiya told us to do. So thank you. Share it with someone who needs to hear the conversation because you know somebody who needs to hear it. So share it with them. Don't be stingy with the gems. And to all of you who joined today, thank you. We'll see you again in the coming weeks. Like I said, this will be on our YouTube channel, National BDPA. You can also go to bdpa.org/tech and career talks. And these are all there. This talk and all of our previous conversations. So it's all available for you. So share it. Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Stay safe. Stay blessed.
Yes, bye everyone.